He aku rangatira tēnā no tātou katoa. I rungi ngā tohu i waiho te ake nei oku karaua, oku koia ki ahau, me timata taku kōrero pēnei ai. Ko tamate ariki nui te tangata, ko tā ki te mu te waka. Na tamate ariki nui, ko rongo kako, na rongo kako, ko tamate ure haia, pōkai whenua, pōkai moana. Na tamate ure haia, pōkai whenua, pōkai moana, ka puta mai ko kahununu. Ka moia kahununu i arongo mai wahine, ka puta mai ko kahukura nui. Na kahukura nui, ko rākai pāka. Na rākai pāka, ko pōkia te rangi. Na pōkia te rangi, ko te tahingo te rā. Ka whakatau ki nge te kōrero, ko mau kai te maunga, ko waitirohia pūpūrere ana ki nā nuhaka te awa. Ko Ngāti rākai pāka, nā wharera o te tahingo te rā, ko Ngāti kahununu, ko Ngāti rongo mai wahine ngā iwi. Ko te wakatapu o tā ki te mukukura haupo ngā waka, e aku nui, e aku rahi, tēnā koutou mihi mai. Kia ora tātou. I was sitting this morning reflecting on the time of year, and as Mark Tione said to us when he welcomed us this morning on behalf of Tangata Whenua, we're about to begin the period of matariki. And I'm reminded of a couple of sayings about matariki. Matariki ahunga nui, matariki hunga nui. Matariki, amongst other things, in traditional times was a time of reflection. It was a time to reflect on the year that had just passed. It was a time to look at what the learnings were from that, and it was also a time to plan forward. It happened to coincide with the least productive time on the whenua, and so people had a lot of time to congregate. And so those two sayings, matariki ahunga nui, refers to the abundance of food that was gathered prior to matariki. Matariki hunga nui refers to people coming together to do that reflection, to think about what's past and to move on to what's coming forward. And I want to start in this forum, as I did in my mihi this morning, by acknowledging you. I'm always conscious that people like yourselves are at the front end, that are at the front of services and making a difference to the lives of people. And I was raised by people who taught me along similar principles, and they said, me mihi ka tika. You should acknowledge whenever you are in the presence of people who do good things. And so it might be viewed as a shameless act of pati. I'm not sure how to translate that. I think it's called greasing in English. But those are the values I was raised on. I was raised in a small village called Nuhaka, which until I was 12 years old was the centre of the known galaxy for me, located between Wairoa and Gisborne. I was raised on the tribal lands of my people. And in a village where those principles were part of our everyday lives. And so I start off, as I always do, by acknowledging those things and the principles that bring us here. And I think for many of us, those are the principles we think about when we work with our people. Those are the things, the values and principles are the things that we ultimately measure ourselves against. Not our profitability necessarily, but it's the difference we make to people's lives. So my understanding is that my role here today is to talk a little bit about the Māori Health Directorate and to talk a bit about what it is we do. And I do want to share some thinking with you. This is thinking that we are developing at this stage. And I'm conscious that one of the themes of this meeting is to get some insights into Wellington and what Wellington does. So I thought I might share some of the thinking about our directorate. How do I move this? Oh, do you use this? There you go. One of the things I'm conscious of, and some of you who might have been at a presentation I did recently will be familiar with this, I'm a great believer that where you start and how you frame up a discussion will drive and determine where it ends up. And this is a saying from a significant person called Āpirahama Taonui in Kaitaia. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, after the treaty was initially signed on 6 February 1840, over a period of 3 or 4 months, it was taken from various locations from Kaitaia in the north to Ruapuke Island, which is just off Invercargill in the south. And in April, it found its way to Kaitaia. And at the meeting, at the hui they had to talk about the treaty in Kaitaia, Āpirahama Taonui was one of their significant chiefs, and he turned up and he noticed something. So he got to the marae. There was a table on the marae ātea. There was a flag of England on top of it, and on top of that was the treaty to be signed. And he said, e nā rangatira whakarongo mai, ka we uwhia te treaty te kahu o Ingarangi, engari kia mau anō ki tauake kahu, te kahu kiwi o Aotearoa nei. He said, distinguished people do not place the flag on England, do not place the treaty on the flag of England, but rather place it on something that means that is significant to you, the Kiwi feathered cloak. And I think one of the things that Āpirahama was reflecting on from the outset of the treaty relationship was that the treaty relationship is grounded in Aotearoa. The treaty relationship and where it goes forward starts here, that the solutions around the treaty relationship in this country start here. And he was also saying that we should hold on to the things that are significant to us in our context, that are significant to us in our country. And his very strong view at the signing of the treaty was, you start in the right place, you'll finish in the right place. So I want to talk a bit about the work that the Māori Health Directorate does, and I suppose it's really focused around three key areas. The work in terms of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and Māori Crown relationships, the work we do in advancing, along with the rest of the ministry, He Korowai Oranga, the Māori Health Strategy, and the work we're leading around equity. I start with the treaty because I work in the Māori Health Directorate. While we are charged not only with understanding Māori health needs, but understanding the health and disability system, understanding how different components in the health sector work together, we are the Māori Health Directorate. And in framing up Māori health aspirations and Māori development aspirations, they start with the treaty. I often remind people that while equity is a really important consideration and a really important driver for Māori health, and indeed in addressing the inequities experienced by other New Zealanders, when I go out and engage with Māori, they don't use the term equity to start the discussion. They use the terms mana motuhake, tino rangatiratanga. Those are the terms they use, drawing on the treaty and the Declaration of Independence. And from my perspective, and for my directorate, it's important that we engage and that we understand Māori health aspirations and where they come from. And for us, it starts with an understanding of the treaty, with acknowledging and strengthening Māori Crown relationships, which is a priority of this government, and recognising also that Treaty of Waitangi obligations have now been incorporated in sector legislation and health policy for over 25 years. So part of what I want to share with you at the moment, because I see this as an opportunity to share thinking. This isn't necessarily a government policy position. This is our thinking about how we might frame up our responsibilities with regard to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And so if I look at what's up there, in this case, we've taken the approach of using the articles. It's quite interesting, I got asked the other day whether or not treaty principles applied, and I said, of course they do. You cannot arrive at treaty principles without an understanding of the text of the treaty and its context. But you can also frame up treaty responsibilities against the actual articles themselves. And so you'll see from there that there's a balancing act, certainly for government, around how we, if you look on the left and right-hand sides, about how we achieve Treaty of Waitangi obligations and equity considerations for Māori, and how we also address those equity and other considerations for all New Zealanders. It's not one or the other. We have to deliver on both. We also have to deliver on the balance and an understanding of the balance of those treaty responsibilities. And you will be well aware that there are certain tension points there between those who might strongly articulate treaty responsibilities under kāwanatanga, those who might strongly articulate treaty responsibilities under rangatiratanga. We're required to look at the treaty in its entirety and look at how those different parts of the treaty come together. I've listed on the right-hand side there the Ritinga Māori Protocol. For those of you who aren't aware, at the time the treaty was signed, a deputation came from Hokianga. I'm told all great things come from Hokianga. And they were led by a French Catholic bishop called Bishop Pompallier. And in the middle of the treaty discussions, he raised the point in front of Hobson and others, and he said, what guarantees can you give of religious freedom? And so they worked, or Hobson did with the missionaries there, and they drafted a statement in the Māori language which was read out to everyone in attendance to get their agreement. In legal terms, it's known as a protocol. And in that protocol, it recognised, because I presume they were the main denominations in the country at that stage, the religious freedom of Anglicans, Catholics, Wesleyans, and it made reference to what's called ngāritinga Māori, which are not only traditional Māori religious and cosmological practices, but also the theories and philosophies that sit behind it. And so in this diagram here, we were doing some, and this is, as I said, this is live thinking. This was got draft for discussion at the bottom of it. Thinking about how it was we would frame up some of our responsibilities, not only in the ministry, but also to Māori and our treaty partners. And you'll see these aren't definitive, but under Article 1, there's obviously a clear responsibility for government to be active stewards and proactive stewards of the health and disability sector. That links to what I've described, or what we've described as mana whakahaere. So we've looked in the bottom there about different aspects of mana and how you might frame them around a treaty discussion. And so that mana whakahaere is about the responsibilities of government to govern well. That under Article 2, and this particular focus on iwi and Māori development, that the focus there is on mana motuhake, the unique and indigenous nature of Māori. And I want to pause a bit on there, because when you look through the discourse, or certainly the records we have of the discourse around the country and the treaty discussions, which I quickly remind people were all conducted in te reo Māori. They were not conducted in English. They were conducted in te reo Māori because 6 February 1840 and afterwards, the lingua franca of this country was te reo Māori. If you wanted to work and operate in this country, you either had to know te reo Māori or know somebody who could translate it for you. And foremost amongst all of those gatherings and all of those rangatira and other who attend was a desire for them to be given assurance that they would be able to continue as Māori, that their right to be Māori would be a fundamental guarantee of the treaty relationship. Under Article 3 in ōritetanga and equity, obviously a strong equity focus. That links obviously to Article 1 responsibilities that government has and its obligations to all citizens. And we frame that up around mana tangata or fairness and justice. And if you look down the Ritinga Māori protocol, it's very much about mana Māori and Māori cultural identity and integrity. So these things aren't new, I quickly add. But the key thing certainly for me and my directorate and our ministry is a clear understanding that if we're going to be engaging in a partnership discussion with our treaty partners, we need to understand the full range of treaty responsibilities. We need to be able to find the balance, and it's a constant challenge in government to find the balance between those different dimensions of treaty responsibilities. And we have to deliver on all of them. It's not one or the other. We're required to be delivering on all of those things. Oh, karoha, I hope I didn't tire you out with that diagram. He koro ai oranga. So our second key focus in our work is the Māori Health strategy. And it's testimony to its longevity that it's been in place since 2002 and was refreshed in 2014. It's a living strategy. It's a strategy that was developed as a result of extensive consultation and well endorsed by the sector. Its overall aim is pai ora. That we have a collaborative, a wider wellbeing focus and a strategic focus on the horizon, the overall aim. And within that there are 3 key elements. Whānau ora, a focus on the wellbeing of whānau. Waia ora, a focus on healthy environments. And Maori ora, a focus on the wellbeing of individuals. As I said, for those of you who've been in the sector for some time, and I know many of you have been, this won't be new to you. This is a framework and this is a strategy which has been in place for some time. The refreshed part of the strategy is that top end of the pyramid. And sitting down there are key directions, key threads and pathways to give effect to those higher order elements of the strategy. As I said before, the testimony to the framework that's been in He Koro Ai Oranga is it has enjoyed support for some time. That doesn't mean that different areas of it haven't changed in terms of focus, but it's still the key driver for the work that our directorate does, and in fact soon we will be working and engaging with the sector to develop the next Māori Health Action Plan. Our third priority area is around equity. You will be familiar that the ministry recently released the definition of equity, In Aotearoa New Zealand, people have differences in health that are not only avoidable but unfair and unjust. Equity recognises different people with different levels of advantage require different approaches and resources to get equitable health outcomes. One of the interesting things about equity is that despite the fact that we have, as far as I'm aware, over 2 decades of evidence clearly showing that we have prejudice and bias in the system and in the sector, it's still a difficult discussion to have. But I think post-Christchurch and post-other events, we're at a time where our country, I think to move forward, needs to have brave discussions and courageous discussions. The interesting thing I think about equity sometimes is I still get asked what an equity focus is trying to solve. And that's really insightful for me that we still have some way to go to demonstrate to many New Zealanders that our system is unfair and unjust. While we have 20 years or more of evidence to demonstrate that, that doesn't always resonate across a broad sector of New Zealand. Sometimes I think that the stories we need to demonstrate are the simple personal stories that are so compelling, that are so unfair, that they resonate with people as opposed to showing them statistics going back 10 years. Now, can I quickly add that I'm not dissing those statistics or our focus in that area. But I do find sometimes those personal stories which clearly demonstrate prejudice, those personal stories which clearly show that people are being treated unfairly, are the ones that most resonate with a wider cross-section of New Zealanders. And I do believe that most New Zealanders would consider themselves to have a strong sense of social justice and fairness. And if we can show them and continue to show them that we have a long way to go to challenge our system to do better, to drive out disadvantage, to drive out prejudice in the sector, that can go a long way towards getting them on board. A strong equity approach requires actions which directly address current inequities, which are experienced by Māori. Now, can I just say with the focus on equity that one of the things I am conscious of, and I'm certainly informed on, is that inequities cannot be addressed indirectly. We have to address them directly. We have to have challenging conversations about what they look like, and then we have to address them. They won't be addressed by doing things at the side. So while we might have a general population approach to these things, they will not reduce disparities. We have to address these inequities directly. So in terms of framing up our response around equity, there are a number of areas where the Ministry of Health has a requirement to lead activity. There are a number of areas in the equity work where we need to collaborate with others. And there are a number of areas where we need to influence. What is key in that is addressing inequities will require us, the Ministry, and all of our people in the sector to be working on the same page, to be working along the same agenda, if we are to achieve those equity aspirations that we're seeking to undertake. I like the whare example for a number of reasons, one of which is the way a whare is set out, if you're not aware. You always give the larger side of your house to your manuhiri. And I was kind of reflecting on that when Mark Tione was talking this morning about when I first came to Wellington in 1985. And people who are tangata whenua here welcomed me to this place that was Wellington and gave me the large part of their house. I've always thought it was a very interesting statement about manaakitanga. You know, that was one of the values they put up there on the board before. Getting to address these issues is not going to be easy. One of the things I reflect on is, and I'll share a story that, and I may have shared this in a previous presentation, that my grandfather, because I'm on safe ground if I say my grandfather told me this, there are a number of versions, but from this famous saying of Sir James Henare, the version my grandfather told me, he was a member of the 28th Māori Battalion, and he got invalided after North Africa. And he said that at the end of the North African campaign, where they had some of the most concentrated and bitter fighting between any Allied forces, and in particular the Māori Battalion and Rommel's Africa Corps, they turned Rommel around and he retreated to to Italy, and the Māori Battalion and other allied forces were getting ready to cross the Mediterranean to go into Italy. And Sir James, as the commander of the battalion, had to stand up and speak to his troops. And he looked at them and he realised that they'd had a tough time. That one of the strengths of the Māori Battalion was that it was a kinship-based group. One of the challenges was that the people they lost were their brothers, their uncles, their cousins, their nephews. And he stood up in front of them and said these fateful words to give them courage to move on. He said, "Ko tawhiti ke tō haringa mai, kia kore e haere tonu. E nui rawa nā mahi, kia kore e mahi tonu. You've come too far not to keep going. You've done too much work not to continue on." And I think across all of those areas I've talked about now, they all provide significant challenges, not only for me and my directorate and our ministry, but our sector. They are challenges that are in front of all of us, and they are challenges that will require all of us to harness our collective energies and efforts to address. Nā reire aku rangatira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora. I'll take any easy questions. I'll take the old hard one.
We just have 2 questions just in the interest of time. So the lovely lady here. Kia ora. I haven't got a question at all, but I just wanted to, my name is Tracy. I'm the General Manager of Mōkai Pātea Services in iwi mandated Health and Social Service in Taihape. I'm here with a number of other colleagues that are iwi health providers in the Whangarei district, Te Puke Karanga, who provide support to our whānau up the top end of the Whangarei River, and also Ngāti Rangi Community Health. I want to mihi to you for the kōrero that you've just put out to the group. When you're talking about the equity within our space, the reality is that we are in a space of having to compete with mainstream organisations to try and even keep kaimahi within our spaces, because we can't, and as far as money is concerned, we can't compete at all. Every single person that's in here and every single organisation, of course, they have their own. We've all got our own issues as to how we keep opening our doors every day. It's really awesome to listen to your kōrero, because actually I decided to go and sit over there because it's more comfortable. But what you're saying to me, it means that if you are listening, you say you're listening, then that's going to filter back down to people like us that are working like everyone else works frontline with their whānau. And I'm hopeful for future. What I am interested in, and what I'm always interested in, I sit in a number of other spaces. We're not just in health, and the reality is that the Māori providers that are in this room probably aren't all sitting just in health. We are sitting in health. We're sitting right across the board. So we don't just, it's right across the board. In one of the spaces that I sit in the local government area, when they talk about equity, people don't want to know about it. They don't want to know, and I'm talking about when you're saying that as us as New Zealanders all working together and all having an understanding about where a Māori point of view or paradigm compared to everyone else, it's very hard to, we can say it in words, I'm sure you get this, but actually to see it in action, it's a very hard thing to do, and people have to learn to trust each other, and that is a very hard thing to do. So I just want to mihi and thank you for that kōrero. That sort of resonated for me, and so kia ora.
Kia ora whaia, tēnā koutou.
Kia ora Johnny, mihi nui ki a koe.
Kia ora Paula.
See you again, and glad to see you in this role. I've got a question for you to say, do you see the Māori Health Directorate having a role in influencing the environments which are giving rise to so much disparity and inequity? So our communities are saturated with junk food, junk dairies, tobacco, alcohol, gambling, and they give rise to so much poor health outcomes and mental health stress. And we're pushing money at the bottom of the cliff, fantastic, but we want to stop the fall off the top. Do you see a role for the Māori Health Directorate in advocating for change?
Oh, absolutely. I think we're led by Māori health needs. We're led by what exacerbates, influences Māori health inequities. Absolutely. It's we need to follow whatever ends are required to address them. Certainly, and it isn't just about looking at the health sector and the health system. We're challenged to look in other areas. I think our Māori frameworks make it much easier for us to ignore some of the portfolios that government compartmentalises its work into. Our focus on whānau means that we follow whānau, and we follow those whānau when they engage with health services, and we need to understand and follow those whānau when they engage with others. So yes, we have to follow those areas which, as I said, are exacerbating, impacting on and influencing Māori health inequities. We need to follow them and address them.